Welcome, everybody. So I'm Rob Smith. If you don't know me, this is my channel, Upward Thought, and I've got a special guest today. We don't do this too often. And Mark, we've been planning this for over a year, I think. It's
A long
been a
time,
while.
a long
So
time.
my
Yeah.
guest today is Marc Martinez, and he goes by the handle Latter Day Lamanite. And Mark, we've been in touch with each other electronically for a long time.
A
But
long
I think this
time.
is actually the first time we've spoken. I guess this isn't face to face, but on video.
FaceTime, something like that. FaceTime, yeah.
Now, I guess I'll just let you introduce yourself instead of putting words in your mouth. But I'm excited for this talk today, and loosely, the topic is fatherhood and the love of Christ. Those are both powerful, wonderful topics. But why don't we just get started, and you can maybe tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
The short story is I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. Um, I I guess where the story really starts to take off is when I received my mission call to Germany. Um, all the youth, all the young men at back then, this was the mid late '80s, were being called, because we're all Hispanic. Um, we were all being Everybody was being called to Mexico, Argentina, South American countries. And so I expected, when I received my mission call, I fully expected to go somewhere south. I fully expected to serve in Mexico or Peru, something like that. Uh, but to my surprise, I was being sent to Munich, Germany. Interestingly enough, I took 4 years of German in high school, and I didn't even plan on taking uh, German 3 and German 4. I remember I wanted to learn a different language because I had already, started to have enough of German, but I decided I wanted to learn French. But for some reason, unbeknownst to me, I was assigned to take up German 3, and so I decided to just go all 4 years in high school. Took a semester in college. After 1 year in college, I decided that college wasn't for me, and I submitted my papers, and I was sent to Germany, and that's where I met my wife, Lori. Um, Soon after I returned home, I already knew. I mean, through prayer and some amazing personal revelation, I had no doubt that she was the one who I was going to marry. So we married later that year. This was November of 1991. So this year will be 34 years. Yeah, this November will be 34 years.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Um, and well, the first 10 years, let me back up a little bit. I remember the first year it was actually our honeymoon. We started talking about names for kids, and we were just throwing a lot of different ideas. And for some reason, I distinctly remember we were in the elevator in the hotel that we were staying, while discussing, having children and what we would name them. I distinctly had this impression that I was not going to be able to have children. And of course, I put it aside because who can predict the future? You don't know until it happens. Well, 10 years later, after my dear wife had been through a lot of hospital visits, uh, because of endometriosis and ovarian cysts, and at one point in time, she had a tubal pregnancy. And so, what is it called? An ectopic pregnancy. And that's where the fertilized egg attaches itself to the fallopian tube rather than inside the uterus. And that presents a huge risk to the mother, and it can cause death. And so the nurses didn't realize what was going on, but the wife, she had an idea. And so after consulting with one another, the nurses, the doctors, I can't remember, they concluded that yes, she did have an ectopic pregnancy. So they had to hurry up and get that taken care of. And it was at that point in time, this was late '90s, I think, late '90s at some point, '99, I think. We began to discuss becoming foster parents. And so I thought, okay, well, that's what we're going to do. and we began undergoing the process of applying to DCFS here in the state of Utah. And there's a long and involved process where you get background check. You go through some courses where you learn the psychology of the children. There are various categories of children. Some where they have the least amount of trauma, and then there are some that are really traumatized. And so we really didn't we weren't really going to be picky. I thought I thought that we were going to adopt an infant and raise the infant from there on. But my wife, I remember her deciding that we should look into fostering young boys, because there's a lot of boys out there in the system, boys and girls, and I can't even imagine what it's like for them to be bumped around the system. One family after another who's just, I don't want to sound what's the word, pessimistic or cynical, that a lot of families are out there just for the money, but there are some out there that foster care is just a means of income, revenue, income, and that was the case for the first boy that we fostered after having visited some facilities in Salt Lake City. I remember we had just built I had just built my home as a general contractor, and I remember taking a shower. I think this was the first or second year we were living in our home, and this was about 2001, I believe, because he was 12 and he was born in 89, so that would, yeah, that's about right. It was about 2001. I was taking a shower, and I heard my wife yell out, "Hey, we have a chance to become foster parents to this boy named Ron Martinez." And I said, "He's the one." I just knew he was the one. You know, maybe it was because we have the same last name, or maybe it was because the spirit knew something that I didn't. In any case, she said, "Okay." So we went and met him. I'm sorry. Sure. You cut out a little bit too. I was I was totally fine. I was totally open to it. In my patriarchal blessing, I was told that I would uh, I would receive much joy and satisfaction um, from striving to raise children
Hmm.
righteously in my home. And well, I had to make sure that that promise was going to be fulfilled. So whether it wasn't going to happen through natural childbirth, so it would have to be through foster care. In any case, I was okay with it, and even if we were able to have our own children, I would still be okay with being a foster parent. You know that it was never an issue for me. I have no problem with that. I love people, and I've always loved being an influence to people, being a mentor to young kids. So I didn't think anything about it. It's like we're gonna foster kids and bring them up and do our best, give them a chance in life. And so I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you.
Um,
Sorry for
okay.
interrupting your story,
No, no, you're
but
fine.
and we can
That's all
we
right.
can come back to that later because I
Yeah,
think
sure.
you probably have some. I don't want to say words of advice, but almost you have a very important side of the story to hear for anyone who might be considering that. But we'll
Um,
come back to it.
okay. Yeah, yeah, yes. But I if you have yeah, if whoever's watching this, if you have room in your heart, and you probably do have room in your home. Everybody, I mean, we live in the United States. We have ginormous houses, most of us. Even the most impoverished people in the United States are still richer than most everybody else around the world. Um, so we bring him home, Ron. He's 12 years old. Uh, didn't realize it at the time, and he told us later, but he was high. He was high. He was high as a kite. Um, But he and his all his siblings, they had been raised in a very, very tough environment. The way they ended up in the system was their mother was always out doing things that mother shouldn't be doing. We'll just leave it at that. And he and his brother or siblings would end up being locked up in their room. So they'd have to climb out the window and fend for themselves. And one day, the police were called because they were at a restaurant. It was a Pizza Hut or I don't know where, and they were going around empty tables where people had finished their meal and had left. And people when they leave their meals at restaurants, they sometimes they don't finish their plates and they go to the plates and they'd start eating up. And so that's what they were doing because they were starving. So the police were called. DCFS was involved, and well, fast forward to when my wife and I brought him home. I lived in a 2,800 square foot home that I had built myself up on a hill in Perry, Utah. And so my son, who he's now my son, he's now, how old is Ron now? 36. He's about 36 now. He's been married now for a couple of years. By the grace of God and miracles, and it's not an understatement to say miracles. He found a gal. Both of them, you know, been through the ringer of life. They're bringing up a little boy now who's walking around because of this Charlie Kirk incident. She's now very involved with a new church down in central Utah. Uh, so they've turned their lives around. But when he was 12, he had it in his mind to be involved in all kinds of mischief. 12-year-old boys. I was a boy. You were a boy, and when we're boys, at that age, you you get involved in all sorts of mischievous things throughout his time in junior high and high school. I lived in a kind of a small town area, and all the neighbors knew who I was. Um, the police officers, the school bus driver, the principal of the school he was attending, the assistant principal, all the teachers, the judge. I mean, people knew who I was, and they knew who Ron was because he was that kind of character. And it was a really good thing that I was self-employed at the time as a general contractor, and that was about the time when I was doing the best. What my company was doing was at its best. It was at its peak performance. I had 3 crews, and I was building homes all over northern Utah, probably within a, I don't know, 1,600-mile radius. Um, so I could afford to leave the job site every time I would get a phone call from a police officer or a school teacher or a principal or somebody. Um, I remember one night, it was probably about 2 in the morning. Uh, the phone rang, and I picked it up. Mr. Martinez, yeah, we're calling you from the Brigham City Police Department. We have your son here. We need you to come pick him up. Now, keep in mind, he's a minor still. Okay, I don't even remember how old he was, 13, 14, something like that. 12. Why did I answer the phone? Can you just keep him there and I'll get him in the morning? No, Mr. Martinez, we need you to come pick him up right now. All right. So my wife and I got out of bed. I mean, I'm laughing now. Look at my face. But this was not my face at 2 in the morning. And remember, I was in construction, and it is heavy duty labor. It's hard manual labor, and I needed sleep. But we went down to the police station in Brigham City. He was on his bicycle, so we had to put the bicycle in my truck, and we brought him home. And I don't remember anything after that. I probably just wanted to just go back to bed. I don't remember. Anyway, that's one incident. Until he turned 18, um, of course, because he was getting in so much trouble, all his shenanigans. He was always in and out of juvenile detention, and so a lot of my time was also spent going with my wife to visit him in at the youth detention facility, which was in Logan, Utah, out somewhere west in Logan. And so, um, fast forward a little bit, his brother, his older brother, who's about a year older, Jeremy, he would come to visit so he could spend time with his brother. So both of them, those two had a love-hate relationship. They were the best of friends, but they could beat the snot out of each other sometimes. Ron's a little guy. At that time he was 160 pounds, 150 pounds. And Jeremy, well, today he's a really big guy. He's like 6'6", 200 and well, he'll probably say 260 pounds. I don't know. He's a big kid.
Wow.
He's bigger than me.
Yeah.
He dwarfs me. Uh, they got into it one day, and Jeremy decided he didn't want to spend any more time at the house, and so he started walking down the street, heading to the bus stop, or I don't know where he thought he was going. And I didn't know what was going on, and I came upstairs. Where's Jeremy? He's like, oh, he left. I'm like, what? You just can't leave. I mean, this kid is these are still minors. So I took off down the street looking for him, and I could see him all the way down there. So here I am hustling down. Uh, and he was the last sibling in his family. Of all his siblings, of all his half brothers and sisters, his brother Jeremy was the last one. He was still bouncing around the system, and I could tell how he felt dejected, unloved, and just I don't know, maybe not much self worth. I don't know. So I finally caught up to him halfway down the street before he made it to the highway, and I said, "Hey, you got to come back up. You got to come up. We're in charge of you, and we got to make sure you're okay." He's like, "Oh, I'm not going back up there. I'm not." He just refused to come back up to the house. I'm like, "What am I going to do to persuade him to come back up to the house with me?" And I thought, oh, I knew what I had to do. I dug deep, and this was without my wife's knowledge or consent. But this was I had to do something. I said, "Look, if you come back up to the house with me, I promise you, I'll take you under my wing. I'll teach you everything I know about construction, if that's what you want to do. Whatever you want to do in life, I'll take you under my wing and give you a good chance in life." And he's like, he didn't even think about it for a second. He's just like, "All right." So he came back up, and I thought, "Oh, okay." He's coming back up, and now I'm thinking, okay, not only do I have one foster kid, now I'm probably gonna have another foster kid. So we went through the process of with DCFS of becoming uh, his foster parents as well. So now we had two teenagers in our house who were, I think the DCFS called it structured, and that's where they're the most troubled, the highest level of troubled youth. Boy, oh boy, was that challenging. I mean, I had plenty of love in my heart. That wasn't an issue. It was learning on the fly how to be a parent, not just. I mean, we're not bringing up boys from infancy. There's no manual for this, and of course, you're a parent. Kids don't come with manuals, and each one is different. Well, here we are, boom, turbo parenting. We're parents to now two teenage hellions, and yeah, that set the stage for the next 35 years. No, 25 years, 20ish, 20 some years. Yeah, up until today. That was about 2001 when we first brought Ron home, and you know, after they turned 18, they still weren't out of trouble. It wasn't just juvenile detention anymore. Now it was jail. You know, now they're responsible for their own actions. That's good and that's bad. Good in a way because before that, uh, the government was garnishing my wages as a self-employed contractor to keep them. Every time they got in trouble with the law, going to juvenile detention and all the costs associated with that, it was taking a big chunk out of my income. That on top of running a business, paying a mortgage, all the things that come with all those things. But when they turned 18, they were now in charge of they were now responsible financially for their own uh, sentences, I guess. Whenever they get in trouble and they end up going to jail. Uh, Yeah, it was like I got a little raise, you know.
Mm.
But they would still call and hey, Dad, how's it going? And yeah, can you put money on my books? Yeah, sure. So that never stopped. Well, it stopped now because now they're both out now. Uh, Ron is in Central Utah. He's working the mines and he's making some pretty good money. Uh, Jeremy just came to Utah from Wyoming and he's upstairs right now. He's staying with me for a little while, and he's put out I don't know how many dozens of applications. And here in Utah, Utah's not a very felon friendly state as far as hiring goes.
Mm.
Wyoming is a lot more felon friendly, and so it's easier for him to get jobs over in Wyoming. But he drove himself to a job fair yesterday or the day before to go work in the same mines with his brother, and they received him pretty well. I think it looks good. So yeah, they're doing really well today. Um, there was one point in time where Ron called me. I can't remember if he was in jail or in prison, but he this was the first time that I received an acknowledgement. He said, "Dad, thank you for taking me and Jeremy, and thank you for taking care of us. If it wasn't for you, we'd be dead in the gutter." And I still remember that day. I don't remember a lot because my memory's not what it used to be. And it's getting harder to remember things, but I do remember that. Um, I just thought, wow, that's the first time I'm hearing something like this. Like not so much gratitude, maybe validation. I don't know. It just does something. When you're like, okay, they get it. They're starting to get it. There's something there. There's a connection. That kind of a deeper connection. And so yeah, yeah, they've been through a lot. They've been through a lot, and Ron's always had a good head on his shoulders. He's smart, really smart, and he knows how to get things done. And I knew that once he got his head uh, screwed on right, that he'd be able to do really, really well. And he's doing really, really well right now. He's down in Central Utah. I think it's like Helper, somewhere around there. It's a little town, Price or Helper, something like that. Uh,
So let
that's
me ask you, that it's a very interesting story because, well, for many reasons, but one reason is I think that your story manages to concentrate all of the things people worry about in fostering because they actually happened. So, so, and I think I think that's important to sort of talk about some more and help people work through. So, I think that when most people think about fostering and maybe they're in a place where they don't have children yet, or maybe they have a few or whatever, but they are worried about a situation that would let's say be less than ideal as far as uh, child's background, child's behavior, both in the past and ongoing. And in your story, obviously they had been through a lot before you were able to adopt them, and then they
yeah.
continued to go through a lot and they're still going through a lot. And yet everything you've said about this, it just beams meaning and joy. So how would you explain that to someone that looks at you and says, Mark, um, how is this a happy story? I'm not saying that, by the way, but what would you say to someone if they said, but why? Because I'm not even going to ask you, would you do it again? I know you would. And so how would you explain that to someone that doesn't understand?
You know, I think people don't really understand patience or love. When I say love, if you can ask anybody in the church or anybody out there what charity means. Of course, in the LDS church, we say, well, it's a pure love of Jesus Christ. Okay, what does that mean? That could mean something different to a lot of members. But charity, agape, is unconditional, self-sacrificing, infinite love. It's an action word. It's not a word of affection. It's an action word. If you To the people who may consider adopting, if you want to learn patience, if you ask God for patience to teach you patience, He's going to put you in circumstances that will test your patience. If if you can handle that, maybe you've got it in you to ask the Lord to teach you long suffering, because that's one of His attributes is long suffering. And if you want to learn long suffering with patience and ask Him, He will put you in situations to do that. Same thing for love. Same thing for all other godly attributes. People think that they have love, and it gets thrown around so cheaply. Love is love. People don't understand that. Especially there are some communities out there that just say love is love and they wave the flag. But no, that's not what they're saying. They're not. They don't understand love. They'd abandon it as soon as trouble comes around. Enough trouble, they'll abandon the love that they profess. They'll abandon it without a second thought. Love, true agape, true charity, true Christ-like love does not abandon. It sticks it out. It endures. That's what charity is. It endures. Uh, and maybe there are people out there that don't have the capacity to love that hard yet. Maybe to bring in a foster child. They can start with something else. I don't. I just dove into the deep end, but that's who I am. I can't. I don't know how to tell somebody to do something unless you just do it. You've got to decide whether or not you're a disciple of Jesus Christ, and you got to decide what that means in your life. I think there are degrees, and everybody starts out small. Everybody starts out, we all start out when we're young. And hopefully by the time you get to be my age, or even President Nelson's age, you've mastered it. You understand it because you've been through the fire, and you've been through more than one fire. You've been through fires, refining fires, until you find out that your love is pure. And the definition of pure is, to me, my definition of pure is unalloyed. Gold isn't pure until all the dross and impurities are burned away. So if we still have all these impurities and dross in our hearts and minds, whether it's video games or vain pursuits or hobbies or addictions or whatever, those are things that take up room where you can put Christ in there, or a foster kid, or volunteer work, whatever, something that's external, because we're always thinking of self. We're all self-centered. We're always looking out for ourselves. My retirement, my plans, my goals. Christ didn't come down for me, 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 me. Christ came down for everybody else. And so maybe not everybody has what it takes to be a foster parent. I don't know. But I think it's worth exploring by at least visiting your local DCFS. What does DCFS stand for, Lori? Division of Child and Family Service. And I think each state has a variation of that title, that name, that uh, and just go in and sit down with the kids, sit down with them, get to know them. You don't have to be a foster parent right off the bat. Go be a mentor. Are there boys clubs in your area? I mean, back when I was growing up, there were things like Boys Club, YMCA, things like that. That's not really a thing anymore. Because kids today, they're stuck in the basements playing video games. That's where everybody is, video games and TikToks and whatever. But if you have opportunities to be a mentor, a scout leader, youth leader of some kind, you get to interact with kids, you know, um, and it comes with a certain amount of noise, because kids are rowdy, they're rambunctious, they get into shenanigans, and then that can test your patience as a parent. I think most of your viewers are parents, if not all of them are parents. Maybe some of them are just young parents starting out. Their kids didn't come with manuals, and maybe they're learning patience right now. And they think, well, I'm like, how can I become a foster parent when I can't even take care of my own 2-year-old? I don't know. Everybody's circumstances are different and unique, and
There, there's probably a bunch of lessons that apply. I mean, parenthood is parenthood. It's not a question. Well, let's talk about that. What what do you think you've learned about parenthood that transcends, biological connection? Because I think so many people, when they look at the potential for fostering, they think that somehow it's going to be different because it's biologically, you
It's
weren't there
not.
from the beginning. Can you
Yeah,
talk
it's
about that?
well, I can't relate to I can only relate to people who have fostered kids or become adoptive parents, uh, because I was not able to have my own children, my
Sure.
own biological children. I can't make that comparison and that contrast. I don't know what it's like to hold an infant son or daughter. I don't know what it's like to cut the umbilical cord. It's a foreign concept to me to see my child's first step or hear my child's first word. I have no concept. It's I can't relate to that. I don't know. I can tell you what it's like to raise teenagers. I can tell you what it's like to stop them from killing each other. Beating each other up. I can tell you what it's like to drive to another state because your son ran off because your teenage son ran off and disappeared and you can't find him and you haven't seen him for a week and nobody knows where he's at and he's over in another state. I got a call once from I was at work and I didn't know where my son was, Jeremy. And I finally got a call from a trooper or an officer or somebody in Colorado. Come to find out that my son Jeremy ended up in Colorado with I don't know how he ended up with the people he ended up with, and they had him in a facility. This was just before he was still a minor. He was 16, maybe 17. So he was an older teenager. Uh, so I dropped what I was doing, put my foreman in charge, told him I'll be right back. I gotta go get my son. I went home, grabbed my wife, and we beelined it to this place in Colorado. And I don't even know how I made the whole drive awake, but we got him, and he was high as a kite on I don't know what, paranoid. If I did know better, I'd say he was schizophrenic. But anyway, we brought him home, and that was that. I don't remember much after that. It was just another day of shenanigans. So I know what it's like to deal with these kinds of things when your child is acting out. Excuse me. When your child is acting out, when he's just defiant, doesn't listen to you, just takes off whenever he wants. What are you gonna do? Lock the doors at night so you can't get back in the house? You where do you draw the line? What's there's no manual. I
Do
don't
you
know what
think
it's
it
like.
do you
Uh-huh.
think it's fair to say that love is more about what you give than what you get?
Oh,
And
absolutely. Uh,
so if that's true, then it's 100% transferable. I mean,
sure.
I think so many experiences in life are designed by God who loves us more than we can understand, and in order to help us learn more about that love. And maybe we leave so much on the table, zooming out a little bit from parenthood and all of its various forms it can take, um, to other relationships that we have with our fellow men. I feel like we're supposed to be taking what we learn and applying it everywhere, and leaving it siloed in like more narrow, um, environments and situations. It's like it's not what we're supposed to be doing. And I think your story is great because it highlights, like you said, the unconditional nature of true godly love, where you define it by what you pour into it, not what you pour out of it. And to know that with things that matter the most, it's not easy to tell what difference it's going to make in the moment. And I think a lot of parents would agree with that. Parenthood is this unique opportunity to just put your whole soul into someone, and you hope for the best, but you're not going to stop no matter what.
One thing is, and I knew this early on. Um, I think most parents realize this, but their children are always watching them. Um, I knew early on that I wasn't just raising two boys. I was raising future generations. I knew that the way I handled them, the way I brought them up, the way I loved them, the way I spent time with them, the way I suffered for them, the way I did everything that I did for them would transfer to them and their teaching, their parenting skills. Because now Ron is raising a family now. He's got a little family down in central Utah. He's got a little boy who I think he just turned two. Two? He just turned two, and so he has told me, Dad, you're my example. I am who I am today because of you. I watched you. I learned from you, and so
How
I
did
am.
that make you feel, Mark?
I thought I'm glad I did what I did the way I did. I also had to break it. I also had to break a cycle of abuse. I had to come to a point where I reconciled with my own dad. You know, I didn't come with a manual, but I also wasn't a rebel. My dad had a rough childhood, very rough. It was not good, and so I'm kind of like the I don't know. I had to be that words fail me. I had to be that person who breaks the cycle because you got coming from generations of abuse and dysfunction, and then here I am, and then now I'm raising boys who had all kinds of dysfunctions and abuses of their own, a whole different set of abuses and dysfunctions, and I had to somehow learn as I taught. You know what I mean? And my
Yeah,
only
I know
my
exactly what you mean.
and my only
I'm
example
in a
was
similar boat.
yeah. And I'm like, I can't say, well, what would my dad have done? Because I already know how my dad would have done this. And I can't do that. And one time, my son, well, my one time, Ron asked me, well, why don't you handle us the way your dad handled you? And I told him because I wanted to prove to myself and to you guys that I could break the cycle. Um, and I
And
think I did.
how did you get the idea of what to do instead?
I don't know, just a lot of praying, a lot of, you know, I read a couple of books and they were helpful. Um, but I don't know, Rob, prayer.
Says this is a
Also,
powerful testament
oh,
of how much power God has given each of us. Of course, the scriptures say that we're made in His image, and there's a lot that could be said about that. But to me, one piece of it is we have the power, a great deal of power, to like intentionally design ourselves, to choose to be different. You know, and that
thanks,
you're
Ellie.
a living example of that. So, I
Yeah.
mean, Jesus, he didn't grow up in a good environment. He had wonderful parents. His foster dad died at a young age. His mother was wonderful, but he was in an environment that was terrible, and he had to break away from that somehow. And it's a great example to all of us that we can do the same. We can intentionally think about, like, recognize ways that things could be better, and then say, well, what else could we do? And it's kind of a nonstop puzzle.
Yeah. I don't know how I got through all that. Looking back, it seems like a blur. But during those years, I thought, oh my gosh, when is this going to end? You know, when you're waking up at 2 in the morning because your son is at the police station, or because your other son is in Colorado, in another state, and they disappear. I got all kinds of stories, but I know we're kind of limited on time. Uh, but to their credit, they did, because of my patience and willingness to do things with them. They always wanted to go fishing, so I had never gone fishing before, and so Ron always said, "Dad, we gotta." He started calling me Dad at one point too. We gotta go fishing. Like fishing, that's just the boringest, dumbest thing to ever do. Just look, you just stand there and you hold this stick. Okay, let's go fishing. So I went and got a fishing license, bought the pole and all that stuff, and went out there. I think the first time we went fishing, I can't remember. Well, it got to the point where I just thoroughly loved it. I'm like, I get it now. It's not about holding. It's about being out there in nature and how gorgeous everything is. Being out there in the mountains and the birds. It's different. It's very soothing, and I really enjoyed it. So I took him fishing a lot. I took him to Montana. I took him. We went fishing everywhere. Bought a camper, and we just they were still getting into all kinds of trouble. So you had uh, all these incidences of trouble with the police, with judges and teachers and principals, punctuated with these little fishing trips. Um, so there are a lot of good times, a lot of good memories, and I don't really think about the bad ones anymore because I can't really remember them. You know, maybe one or two, but yeah, there were a lot of good times too. Uh-oh, I'm still here. Can anybody else see this? Uh-oh, I don't know what to do. Looks like there's still people here. Yes, we can still hear you, Paul Venable. My name's Mark. My son is Ron. Can you all still see me? Ah, Rob is out. Okay, if you can hear me, Rob's going to start another one. I'll be right back. I'll be right back.